The Chronicles of Conan the Barbarian. Rogues in the House. Written by Robert E. Howard. One fled, one dead, one sleeping in a golden bed. At a court festival, Nabonidus, the Red Priest, who was the real ruler of the city, touched Murilo, the young aristocrat, courteously on the arm. Murilo turned to meet the priest's enigmatic gaze, and to wonder at the hidden meaning therein. No words passed between them, but Nabonidus bowed and handed Murilo a small gold cask. The young nobleman, knowing that Nabonidus did nothing without reason, excused himself at the first opportunity and returned hastily to his chamber. There he opened the cask and found within a human ear, which he recognized by a peculiar scar upon it. He broke into a profuse sweat and was no longer in doubt about the meaning in the Red Priest's glance. But Murilo, for all his scented black curls and foppish apparel, was no weakling to bend his neck to the knife without a struggle. He did not know whether Nabonidus was merely playing with him or giving him a chance to go into voluntary exile, but the fact that he was still alive and at liberty proved that he was to be given at least a few hours, probably for meditation. However, he needed no meditation for decision. What he needed was a tool. And fate furnished that tool. Working among the dives and brothels of the squalid quarters, even while the young nobleman shivered and pondered in the part of the city occupied by the purple-towered marble and ivory palaces of the aristocracy. There was a priest of Anu whose temple, rising at the fringe of the slum district, was the scene of more than devotions. The priest was fat and full-fed, and he was at once a fence for stolen articles and a spy for the police. He worked a thriving trade both ways, because a district on which he boarded was the maze, a tangle of muddy, winding alleys and sordid dens, frequented by the bolder thieves in the kingdom. Daring above all were a gunderman deserter from the mercenaries and a barbaric Cimmerian. Because of the priest of Anu, the gunderman was taken and hanged in the market square, but the Cimmerian fled, and learning in devious ways of the priest's treachery, he entered the temple of Anu by night and cut off the priest's head. There followed a great turmoil in the city, but the search for the killer proved fruitless, until a woman betrayed him to the authorities and led a captain of the guard and his squad to the hidden chamber where the barbarian lay drunk. Waking to stupefied but ferocious life when they seized him, he disemboweled the captain, burst through his assailants, and would have escaped but for the liquor that still clouded his senses. Bewildered and half-blinded, he missed the open door in his headlong flight, and dashed his head against a stone wall so terrifically that he knocked himself senseless. When he came to, he was in the strongest dungeon in the city, shackled to the wall with chains not even his barbaric thews could break. To this cell came Murilo, masked and wrapped in a wide black cloak.
Would you like to live? If I arrange for your escape, will you do a favor for me? I want you to kill a man for me.
Who?
Nabonidus, the king's priest.
When am I to escape?
Within the hour. There is but one guard in this part of the dungeon at night. He can be bribed. He has been bribed. See, here are the keys to your chains. I'll remove them, and after I have been gone an hour, the guard Athicus will unlock the door to your cell. You will bind him with strips torn from your tunic, so when he is found, the authorities will think you were rescued from the outside, and will not suspect him. Go at once to the house of the Red Priest, and kill him. Then go to the Rat's Den, where a man will meet you and give you a pouch of gold and a horse. With those, you can escape from the city, and flee the country.
Take off these cursed chains now and have the guard bring me food. By Crom, I have lived on moldy bread and water for a whole day, and I am nigh to famishing.
It shall be done. But remember, you are not to escape until I have had time to reach my home.
In the dungeon, Conan had been freed and served food by Athacus. But shortly after Athacus left Conan's cell, the Cimmerian saw him arrested and taken away, to be replaced by a new guard, a stolid, dependable creature whom no amount of bribery could have shaken him from his duty. He was unimaginative, but he had an exalted idea of the importance of his job. As the jailer patrolled past Conan's cell during his routine, he was shocked to see the prisoner free of his chains and in the middle of eating beef. So upset was he that he immediately entered Conan's cell to apprehend him without calling the guards first. But Conan brained him with the beef bone, took his poniard and his keys, and made a leisurely departure. As Murilo had said, only one guard was on duty there at night. The Cimmerian passed himself outside the walls by means of the keys he had taken, and presently emerged into the outer air, as free as if Murilo's plan had been successful. But before he would fulfill Murilo's promise, there was some business he had to attend to. Dressed in naught but his loincloth and wielding the stolen poniard, he crept into the maze, a dark district of the city with long alleys and shadowed plazas. His target was the girl who had sold him out to the town guard, and he easily found her. Conan had slunk his way to the door of the girl, and silently broke in using his sword against the lock. He found the girl sitting on her bed, and she paled in terror. Her begs for mercy did nothing for the Cimmerian, and, sheathing his blade, he took the girl and tucked her under his arm as he broke her window and stepped out, keeping close to the ledge. Far below him there was the open alley cesspool, and whilst his captive kicked, floundered and swore, he dropped her.
Murilo, is that you?
Conan!
A good thing I recognized you. I was about to stick you like a fattened pig.
Where are we? In Mitra's name!
In the pits under the Red Priest's house. But why?
What is the time?
Not long after midnight. What are you doing here?
I came to kill Nabonidus. I heard they had changed the guard at your prison.
They did. I broke the new jailer's head and walked out. I would have been here hours agone, but I had some personal business to attend to. Well, shall we hunt for Nabonidus?
Conan, we are in the house of the Archfiend. I came seeking a human enemy. I found a hairy devil out of hell. I gained access to the house. In the outer gardens, I found Nabonidus' dog mauled to death. Within the house, I came upon Joka, the servant. His neck had been broken. Then I saw Nabonidus himself seated in his chair, clad in his accustomed garb. At first, I thought he, too, was dead. I stole up to stab him. He rose and faced me. God! Conan, it was no man that stood before me. In body and posture, it was not unlike a man, but from the scarlet hood of the priest grinned a face of madness and nightmare. It was covered with black hair, from which small pig-like eyes glared redly. Its nose was flat, with great flaring nostrils. Its loose lips writhed back, disclosing huge yellow fangs like the teeth of a dog. The hands that hung from the scarlet sleeves were misshapen and likewise covered with black hair. All this I saw in one glance, and then I was overcome with horror. My senses left me, and I swooned.
What then?
I recovered consciousness only a short time ago. The monster must have thrown me into these pits. Conan, I have suspected that Nabonidus was not wholly human. He is a demon, a were-thing. By day he moves among humanity in the guise of men, and by night he takes on his true aspect.
That's evident. Everyone knows there are men who take the form of wolves at will. But why did he kill his servants?
Who can delve the mind of a devil? Our present interest is in getting out of this place. Human weapons cannot harm a were-man. How did you get in here?
Through the sewer. I reckoned on the gardens being guarded. The sewers connect with a tunnel that lets into these pits. I thought to find some door leading up into the house unbolted.
Then let us escape by the way you came. To the devil with it. Once out of this snake den, we'll take our chances with the king's guardsmen and risk a flight from this city. Lead on.
Useless. The way to the sewers is barred. As I entered the tunnel, an iron grill crashed down from the roof. If I had not moved quicker than a flash of lightning, its spearheads would have pinned me to the floor like a worm. When I tried to lift it, it wouldn't move. An elephant couldn't shake it, nor could anything bigger than a rabbit squirm between the bars.
There's but one thing to do. That's to search for some other exit. Doubtless they're all set with traps, but we have no other choice.
Yeah.
How did you recognize me in this blackness?
I smelled the perfume you put in your hair when you came to my cell. I smelled it again a little while ago when I was crouching in the dark and preparing to rip you open.
Oh.
At that moment, a faint glow became apparent ahead of them, and presently they came to a sharp bend in the corner, about which the light filtered greyly. Together, they peered around the corner, and Murilo, leaning against his companion, felt his huge frame stiffen. The young nobleman had also seen it. The body of a man, half naked, lying limply in the corridor beyond the bend, vaguely illuminated by a radiance which seemed to emanate from a broad silver disc on the farther wall. A strange familiarity about their recumbent figure, which lay face down, stirred Murilo with inexplicable and monstrous conjectures. Motioning the Cimmerian to follow him, he stole forward and bent above the body. Overcoming a certain repugnance, he grasped it and turned it on its back.
Nabonidus, the Red Priest! Then who? What? Wait! Don't kill him yet.
Why not? He has cast off his guise and sleeps. Will you awaken him to tear us to pieces?
No, wait! Look, he is not sleeping. See that great blue welt on his shaven temple? He has been knocked senseless. He may have been lying here for hours.
I thought you swore you saw him in beastly shape in the house above.
I did! Or else... he's coming to. Keep back your blade, Conan. There is a mystery here even darker than I thought. I must have words with this priest before we kill him.
You honor my poor house, young sir. You have brought a bravo, I see. Was your sword not sufficient to sever the life of my humble self?
Enough of this. How long have you lain here?
A peculiar question to put to a man just recovering consciousness. Do not know what time it now is, but it lacked an hour or so of midnight when I was set upon.
Then who is it that masquerades in your own gown in the house above?
That will be Thak. Yes, that will be Thak. And in my own gown? The dog! Your bully's knife yearns for my heart, Murilo. I thought you might be wise enough to take my warning and leave the city.
How was I to know that was to be granted me? At any rate, my interests are here.
You are in good company with that cutthroat. I had suspected you for some time. That was why I caused that pallid court secretary to disappear. Before he died, he told me many things. Among others, the name of the young nobleman who bribed him to filch state secrets, which the nobleman in turn sold to rival powers. Are you not ashamed of yourself, Murilo, you white-handed thief?
I have no more cause for shame than you vulture-hearted plunderer. You exploit a whole kingdom for your personal greed, and under the guise of disinterested statesmanship, you swindle the king, beggar the rich, oppress the poor, and sacrifice the whole future of the nation for your ruthless ambition. You are no more than a fat hog with his snout in the trough. You are a greater thief than I am. This Cimmerian is the most honest man of the three of us, because he steals and murders openly.
Well then, we are all rogues together. And what now? My life?
When I saw the ear of the secretary that had disappeared, I knew I was doomed. And I believed you would invoke the authority of the king. Was I right?
Quite so. A court secretary is easy to do away with, but you are a bit too prominent. I had intended telling the king a jest about you in the morning.
A jest that would have cost me my head. The king is unaware of my foreign enterprises?
As yet. And now, since I see your companion has his knife, I fear that jest will never be told.
You should know how to get out of these rat dens. Suppose I agree to spare your life. Will you help us to escape? And swear to keep silent about my thievery?
When did a priest keep his oath? Let me cut his throat. I want to see what color his blood is. They say in the maze that his heart is black, so his blood must be black too.
Be quiet. If he does not show us the way out of these pits, we may rot here. Well, Nabonidus, what do you say?
What does a wolf with his leg in the trap say? I am in your power. And if we are to escape, we must aid one another. I swear, if we survive this adventure, to forget all your shifty dealings. I swear by the soul of Mitra.
I am satisfied. Even the Red Priest would not break that oath. Now, to get out of here. My friend here entered by way of the tunnel, but a grill fell behind him and blocked the way. Can you cause it to be lifted?
Not from these pits. The control lever is in the chamber above the tunnel. There is only one other way out of these pits, which I will show you. That is the other exit, and I strongly doubt if the door at the head is bolted. But I have an idea that he who would go through that door had better cut his own throat first. Look into the disc.
What had seemed a silver plate was in reality a great mirror set in the wall. A confusing system of copper-like tubes jutted out from the wall above it, bending down toward it at right angles. Glancing into these tubes, Murilo saw a bewildering array of smaller mirrors. He turned his attention to the larger mirror on the wall and ejaculated in amazement. Peering over his shoulder, Conan grunted. They seemed to be looking through a broad window into a well-lighted chamber. There were broad mirrors on the walls, with velvet hangings between. There were like silken couches, chairs of ebony and ivory, and curtained doorways leading off from the chamber. And before one doorway, which was not curtained, sat a bulky black object that contrasted grotesquely with the richness of the chamber. Murilo felt his blood freeze again as he looked at the horror which seemed to be staring directly into his eyes. Involuntarily, he recoiled from the mirror, while Conan thrust his head truculently forward till his jaws almost touched the surface, growling some threat of defiance in his own barbaric tongue. Murilo stared in the mirror at the creature which sat with such monstrous patience before the closed door. He shuddered at the sight of the great black hands, thickly grown with hair that was almost fur-like. The body was thick, broad, and stooped. The unnaturally wide shoulders had burst the scarlet gown, and on these shoulders Murilo noted the same thick growth of black hair. The face peering from the scarlet hood was utterly bestial. And yet, Murilo realized that Nabonidus spoke truth when he said that Thak was not wholly a beast. There was something in the red, murky eyes, something in the creature's clumsy posture, something in the whole appearance of the thing that set it apart from the truly animal. That monstrous body housed a brain and soul that were just budding awfully into something vaguely human. Murilo stood aghast as he recognized a faint and hideous kinship between his kind and that squatting monstrosity, and he was nauseated by a fleeting realization of the abysses of bellowing bestiality up through which humanity had painfully toiled.
In Mitra's name! Nabonidus, what is it?
That is Thak. Some would call him an ape, but he is almost as different from a real ape as he is different from a real man. His people dwell far to the east, in the mountains that fringe the eastern frontiers of Zamora. There are not many of them, but if they are not exterminated, I believe they will become human beings in perhaps 100,000 years. They are in the formative stage. They are neither apes, as their remote ancestors were, nor men, as their remote descendants may be. They dwell in the high crags of well-nigh inescapable mountains, knowing nothing of fire or the making of shelter or garments or the use of weapons. Yet they have a language of a sort, consisting mainly of grunts and clicks. I took Thak when he was a cub, and he learned what I taught him much more swiftly and thoroughly than any true animal could have done. He was at once bodyguard and servant, but I forgot that being partly a man, he could not be submerged into a mere shadow of myself like a true animal. Apparently, his semi-brain retained impressions of hate, resentment, and some sort of bestial ambition of its own. At any rate, he struck when I least expected it. Last night, he appeared to go suddenly mad. His actions had all the appearance of bestial insanity, yet I know that they must have been the result of long and careful planning. I heard a sound of fighting in the garden, and going to investigate, for I believed it was yourself, being dragged down by my watchdog, I saw Thak emerge from the shrubbery dripping with blood. Before I was aware of his intention, he sprang at me, and with an awful scream, and struck me senseless. I remember no more, but can only surmise that following some whim of his semi-human brain, he stripped me of my gown and cast me still living into the pits. For what reason, only the gods can guess. He must have killed the dog when he came from the garden, and after he struck me down, he evidently killed Joka. As you saw the man lying dead in the house, Joka would have come to my aid, even against Thak, who he always hated.
Surely he sees us. Why does he not charge us? He could break this window with ease.
He does not see us. We are looking into the chamber above us. That door that Thak is guarding is the one at the head of these stairs. It is simply an arrangement of mirrors. Do you see the mirrors on the walls? They transmit the reflection of the room into these tubes, down which other mirrors carry it to reflect it at last on an enlarged scale in this great mirror. I constructed these pits for a place of refuge, as well as a dungeon. There are times when I have taken refuge here and through these mirrors watched doom fall upon those who sought me with ill intent.
But why is Thak watching that door?
He must have heard the falling of the grating in the tunnel. It is connected with bells in the chambers above. He knows someone is in the pits, and he is waiting for him to come up the stairs. Oh, he has learned well the lessons I taught him. He has seen what happened to men who come through that door, and when I tugged at the rope that hangs on yonder wall, and he waits to mimic me.
And while he waits, what are we to do?
There is naught we can do, except watch him. As long as he is in that chamber, we dare not ascend the stairs. He has the strength of a true gorilla, and could easily tear us all to pieces. But he does not need to exert his muscles. If we open that door, he has but to tug that rope and blast us into eternity.
How?
I bargained to help you escape, not to betray my secrets.
Murilo started to reply, then stiffened suddenly. A stealthy hand had parted the curtains of one of the doorways. Between them appeared a dark face whose glittering eyes fixed menacingly on the squat form in the scarlet robe.
Petrius! Mitra, what a gathering of vultures this night is!
What do they hear?
Why, what would Petrius and his ardent young nationalists be doing in the house of the Red Priest? Look how eagerly they glare at the figure they think is their arch-enemy. They have fallen into your era. It should be amusing to watch their expressions when they are disillusioned.
Petrius had placed 1 foot lightly over the threshold of the chamber. His fellows were at his heels, their daggers glinting dully. Suddenly Thak rose and wheeled toward them. The unexpected horror of his appearance, where they had thought to behold the hated but familiar countenance of Nabonidus, wrought havoc with their nerves, as the same spectacle had wrought upon Murilo. With a shriek, Petrius recoiled, carrying his companions backward with him. They stumbled and floundered over each other, and in that instant Thak, covering the distance in one prodigious, grotesque leap, caught and jerked powerfully at a thick velvet rope which hung near the doorway. Instantly, the curtains whipped back on either end, leaving the door clear, and down across it something flashed, with a peculiar silvery blur.
He remembered! The beast is half a man! He had seen the doom performed, and he remembered! Watch now! Watch! Watch! The jerk of the rope sealed that chamber. It is simple. The glass panels work in grooves in the doorways. Jerking the rope trips the spring that holds them. They slide down and lock in place, and can only be worked from the outside. The glass is unbreakable. A man with a mallet could not shatter it. Ah!
Murilo saw that it was a panel of heavy glass that had fallen across the doorway, though through it he saw the pallid faces of the conspirators. Petrius, throwing out his hands as if to ward off a charge from Thak, countered the transparent barrier, and from his gestures said something to his companions. Now the curtains were drawn back. The men in the pits could see all that took place in the chamber that contained the nationalists. Completely unnerved, these ran across the chamber toward the door by which they had apparently entered, only to halt suddenly, as if stopped by an invisible wall.
The fall of the panels released the clouds of doom, the dust of the grey lotus, from the swamps of the dead, beyond the land of Kitai.
The trapped men were in a hysteria of fright. They ran wildly from one door to another, beating vainly at the crystal walls, shaking their fists wildly at the implacable black shape which squatted outside. Then one threw back his head, glared upward, and began to scream, to judge from the working of his lips, while he pointed toward the ceiling. In the middle of the ceiling hung a cluster of gold buds. These had opened like the petals of a great carven rose, and from them billowed a grey mist that swiftly filled the chamber. Instantly, the scene changed from one of hysteria to one of madness and horror. The trapped men began to stagger. They ran in drunken circles. Froth dripped from their lips, which twisted as in awful laughter. Raging, they fell upon one another with daggers and teeth, slashing, tearing, slaying in a holocaust of madness. Murilo turned sick as he watched, and was glad that he could not hear the screams and howls with which that doomed chamber must be ringing. Like pictures thrown on a screen, it was silent. Outside the chamber of horror, Thak was leaping up and down in brutish glee, tossing his long hairy arms on high. At Murilo's shoulder, Nabonidus was laughing like a fiend.
A good stroke, Petrius. That fairly disemboweled him. Now, one for you, my patriotic friend. So, they are all down, and the living tear the flesh of the dead with their slavering teeth.
Murilo shuddered. Behind him, the Cimmerian swore softly in his uncouth tongue. Only death was to be seen in the chamber of the grey mist. Torn, gashed, and mangled, the conspirators lay in a red heap. Gaping mouths and blood-dabbled faces, staring blankly upward through the slowly swirling eddies of grey. Thak, stooping like a giant gnome, approached the wall where the rope hung, and gave it a peculiar sideways pull.
He is opening the farther door! By Mitra, he is more of a human than even I had guessed. See, the mist swirls out of the chamber and is dissipated. He waits to be safe. Now he raises the other panel. He is cautious. He knows the doom of the Grey Lotus, which brings madness and death. By Mitra! Our one chance. If he leaves that chamber above for a few minutes, we will risk a dash up those stairs. We must chance it. Perhaps he will be disposing of the bodies as he has seen me do. Quick, follow me up those stairs.
He led them back to the curtained doorway, and peered into the great chamber in time to see Thak emerge from the opposite doorway. It was apparent that the beast man had suspected something. His small, close-set ears twitched. He glared angrily about him and, approaching the nearest doorway, tore aside the curtains to look behind them.
He's in that chamber with the corpses. Why not trap him there as he trapped them?
No. We do not know that he is in there. He might emerge before we could reach the trap rope anyway. Follow me into the corridor. I must reach my chamber and obtain weapons which will destroy him. This corridor is the only one opening from this chamber which is not set with a trap of some kind. My God! The doors are locked, and Thak took my keys from me. We are trapped after all. The beast has me in a panic. If you had seen him tear men as I have seen, well, Mitra aid us, but we must fight him now with what the gods have given us. Come. Man, do you dare pitch your knife against his fangs? Quick! As he will find us soon enough, we will draw him to us. As he rushes past you, sink your blade into his back if you can. You, Murilo, show yourself to him and then flee up the corridor. Mitra knows we have no chance with him in hand-to-hand combat, but we are doomed anyway when he finds us.
Murilo felt his blood congeal in his veins, but he steeled himself and stepped outside the doorway. Instantly, Thak, on the other side of the chamber, wheeled, glared, and charged with a thunderous roar. His scarlet hood had fallen back, revealing his black, misshapen head. His black hands and red robe were splashed with a brighter red. He was like a crimson and black nightmare as he rushed across the chamber, fangs bared, his bowed legs hurtling his enormous body along a terrifying gait. Murilo turned and ran back into the corridor and, quick as he was, the shaggy horror was almost at his heels. Then, as the monster rushed past the curtains, from among them catapulted a great form that struck full on the ape-man's shoulders, at the same time instantly driving the poniard into the brutish back. Thak screamed horribly as the impact knocked him off his feet, and the combatants hit the floor together. Instantly they began a whirl and thrash of limbs, and the tearing and rending of a fiendish battle. Murilo saw the barbarian had locked his legs about the ape-man's torso and was striving to maintain his position on the monster's back while he butchered it with his poniard. Thak, on the other hand, was striving to dislodge his clinging foe, to drag him around within each of the giant fangs that gaped for his flesh. In a whirlwind of blows and scarlet tatters, they rolled along the corridor, revolving so swiftly that Murilo dared not use the chair he had caught up, lest he strike the Cimmerian. And he saw that in spite of the handicap of Conan's first hold and the voluminous robe that lashed and wrapped about the ape-man's limbs and body, Thak's giant strength was swiftly prevailing. Inexorably, he was dragging the Cimmerian around in front of him. The ape-man held. The ape-man had taken punishment enough to have killed 12 men. Conan's poniard had sunk again and again into his torso, shoulders, and bull-like neck. He was streaming blood from a score of wounds. But unless the blade quickly reached some absolutely vital spot, Thak's inhuman vitality would survive to finish the Cimmerian and, after him, Conan's companions. Conan was fighting like a wild beast himself, in silence except for his gasps of effort. The black talons of the monster and the awful grasp of those misshapen hands ripped and tore at him. The grinning jaws gaped for his throat. Then Murilo, seeing an opening, sprang and swung the chair with all his power, and with force enough to have brained a human being. The chair glanced from Thak's slanted black skull, but the stunned monster momentarily relaxed his rending grasp. And in that instant, Conan, gasping and streaming blood, plunged forward and sank his poniard to the hilt in the ape-man's heart. With a convulsive shudder, the beast-man started from the door, then sank limply back. His fierce eyes set and glazed. His thick limbs quivered and became rigid. Conan staggered dizzily up, shaking the sweat and blood out of his eyes. Blood dripped from his poniard and fingers, and trickled in rivulets down his thighs, arms, and breast. Murilo caught at him to support him, but the barbarian shook him off impatiently.
I have slain a man tonight, not a beast. I will count him among the chiefs whose souls I have sent into the dark, and my women will sing of him.
What a night! It is nearly dawn now. What have you, my friends?
I'll dress Conan's hurts, if you will fetch me bandages and the like.
Rogues together, but not fools together. You are the fool, Murilo.
What do you mean?
Back! Another step and I will blast you!
What treachery is this? You swore!
I swore I would not tell the king a jest concerning you. I did not swear to not take matters into my own hands if I could. Do you think I would pass up such an opportunity? Under ordinary circumstances, I would not dare kill you myself without the sanction of the king. But now none will ever know. You will go into the acid vats along with Thak and the nationalist fools, and none will be the wiser. What a night this has been for me! If I have lost some valuable servants, I have nevertheless rid myself of various dangerous enemies. Stand back! I am over the threshold, and you cannot possibly reach me before I tug this cord and send you to hell. Not the Grey Lotus this time, but something just as effective. Nearly every chamber in my house is a trap. And so, Murilo, fool that you are...
His blood was red after all.
It is dawn. Let us get out of here, before we fall afoul of some other doom. If we can climb the outer wall without being seen, we shall not be connected with this night's work. Let the police write their own explanation. He was the fool after all. Had he not paused to taunt us, he could have trapped us easily.
Well, he's traveled the road all rogues must walk at last. I'd like to loot the house, but I suppose we'd best go.
The Red Priest has gone into the dark, so my road is clear in the city, and I have nothing to fear. But what of you? There is still the matter of that priest in the maze, and...
I'm tired of this city anyway. You mentioned a horse waiting at the rat's den. I'm curious to see how fast that horse can carry me into another kingdom. There's many a highway I want to travel before I walk the road Nabonidus walked this night.